Jefferson County Post would like to welcome Jefferson County Mayor Alan Palmieri. We appreciate you doing the interview. I know you've been a little under the weather, and if you start coughing, we will forgive you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and jump right in. Budget season is upon us again. It comes this time every year. And right now, Jefferson County is sitting with around a little more than $500,000 in their available fund balance for the county. And we have about $6 million in the hospital reserve fund and a little over $1 million earmarked for economic development. You've been here for a while. Tell me, are those good numbers for you?
They are. Jefferson County wasn't always in that good a financial shape. Our debt was much heavier than it is presently. Our fund balance was not near what we have today. Our special reserve accounts weren't what they are today. So we're in much better shape today than we have been in years past. Are we at the level we need to be? I think that needs to be reviewed on a yearly basis as all things change.
I know that we've gone several years. I think we've gone 4 years. I am pretty sure we're 4 years now without a property tax increase. We sit at $2.35. And you have in the past been vocal about the fact that you don't want to cut county services, and you feel like that the county residents deserve a certain level of service. Have we reached the wash point where we can no longer continue at $2.35, or do you think there's still a little more room to stay where we are?
We are not a huge operation in Jefferson County as far as governments go. For example, you couldn't compare us to the federal government or any division of the federal government that are so many times larger than what we are. So there's only so far that you can cut. We reached that point several years back, and it's foolish to come in and say we need to cut. We're lean. We're too lean. And the reason we're too lean is because you can find way too many roads that don't meet standards, that need to be improved. You can find bridges that need to be worked on. You can find longer waiting times for ambulances because either the fleet of ambulances we have are getting old or we don't have enough manpower to operate them. You can go into almost every service that the county provides and find justification to increase, not decrease. So the decrease is fine for a large government that has a lot of waste, but you're not looking at waste in Jefferson County.
I know that one of the things that's come up recently, and it has come up in the past, is in regard to the hospital reserve fund, which for folks who don't know, that's money that is paid to Jefferson County and Jefferson City for the hospital lease. And I think Jefferson County's cut is about $750,000 a year. Currently, we have a pretty nice cushion of $6 million in that fund. But Commissioner Baylor has expressed concern that lease is going to be up in the next few years, and that there is always the possibility that Tenova might decline to re-sign the lease, or might want to change the parameters of the lease. I know that you were part of some of the first leases for Jefferson Memorial. How do you see this playing out? I mean, is that a realistic concern? If it is, how do we sit as far as the county goes in that regard?
That should always be a concern to Jefferson City and Jefferson County. You know, the original hospital was set up with the two entities, Jefferson City and Jefferson County, each owning 50% of the hospital. That still continues on a lease payment. Jefferson County receives half and Jefferson City receives half. The fact the lease is coming up, anytime you have a lease come up, you're looking at a renewal, which means that the conditions may change due to economic factors, due to time changes and things of that nature. We originally set that part up so that if at any time the person or organization that we lease a hospital to either filed for bankruptcy, they left, they could no longer maintain the hospital, we would have funds to take it back over and operate it. Would $6 million operate that hospital today? No, it wouldn't operate it for maybe a month at the most. That's a safety net, a cushion. At the time that we formulated that lease, we wanted to ensure that we would have a hospital in Jefferson County. If you'll remember back that many years back, small rural hospitals were closing down all over the nation. We're one of the very few across the entire country that had enough insight and vision to set up a very secure arrangement to make sure that Jefferson County residents would have a health care facility that stayed in the county. So yeah, it would always be a concern because anything could happen at any time. And being one of the originators of the deal with the original St. Mary's, we wanted to make certain that we had the very best of service, of staffing, of facilities for the residents of our county.
I know that that along with actually when the hospital reserve money came into discussion was at this last budget committee meeting, and the budget committee meeting was actually dealing with fire department funding. It was a meeting that was the entirety of the meeting. You were part of a meeting prior to that with the municipalities in the county and some other players who came together and established a rubrics that was brought before the budget committee as far as fire department funding went. And it had, I guess it was set out to be equitable in comparison to the population that those departments served. That was the largest factor in that funding basis. Now, there were some adjustments made during the budget committee meeting. In fact, one of the adjustments brought 4 of the smaller departments who had maybe significantly fewer calls up to $65,000. The historic building portion that covered largely Dandridge Fire Department was taken out of the formula, so that kept Dandridge at largely the same amount that they were at last year. Are you content with the division of the funding now, or would you like to see it tweaked again?
You know, it's a troubling thing. I mean, when you look at the fire departments, paying for volunteer fire service in this county is like an insurance policy. You hope you never have your house on fire. But if you do, you want to know that you've got the service there to protect life and property. My disappointment with the budget committee is they'll ask a sharp question and then they take and they do what they want to do anyway. This is a complicated issue because Jefferson County is a rural county. We're operating on volunteer fire departments, and many of these fire departments are actually taking money out of their own personal pockets to continue to provide service to the residents that they service. We're seeing budget committees that want to just go ahead and say, this is what you're going to get and that's the end of it. What we need is much more dialogue than what we've had, an understanding of what these fire departments have to go through. Commissioner John McGraw made a statement, and it was a very honest statement. And to his credit, I'll say this, he made a comment, he said, I don't know what it takes to operate the fire departments. Well, that's a very honest, direct comment, because it is so complicated. We can't expect these fire departments to continue to provide service at the same level year in and year out. Their costs go up every year. The need for additional equipment, for more training, the fixed expenses that they have, their insurance, everything goes up. And we keep coming in cutting like they do county operations, cut, or don't give you no increase. It's just not realistic. So no, I think there ought to be, and you don't need a whole committee to do it. You got a chairman of the budget committee. Let him meet with the fire departments. Let him sit down and talk with the fire chiefs. There needs to be more of an understanding and communication between, because the volunteer fire departments have received the shorthand every year from the county.
I know that during that particular meeting, committee member and Commissioner Seals, Tim Seals, made the statement that he was willing to raise taxes in order to see some additional monies come to the fire department. Do you feel like that's a possibility? A 2 or 3 cent tax increase earmarked for the volunteer fire departments. Would that be something you would support?
Well, let's look at it like we operate our homes. Can we operate at the same level? You look at people that want to make cuts, people that want to operate at the same level. Their electric bills go up every year. Their gas bill goes up every year. Groceries are going up every year. They've got to dip into the reserves, or they've got to bring in more money, or they have to have an increase somewhere, or they go without. This county, it's our job to provide the services that the residents want. We can't continue to do this year in and year out with no realistic increase. It's like when the schools were considering a school building project, all the calls we received, all the statements that were made during county commission meetings is, if that's what it takes to build new schools, raise my taxes. People know that you cannot operate at the same level with the same amount as you did last year, especially when you've leaned up to the point where we have now.
So I want to go back and address something that you said earlier, a little bit of a mention about E911 and emergency services. It has come up in a couple of meetings that I've been to lately that part of the ISO rating for fire, part of their formula that they use has to do with the number of dispatchers that are on duty and available for emergency services. And of course, if you are short in that department, then the ISO rating, it impacts the ISO rating of the individual departments, which actually the ISO rating is a part of that rubrics for funding that was passed. Do you feel like that we are short in that department? Is there a need there that you know of?
In 911?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Those are terrifically tenuous positions to sit there and get call after call after call and try to handle them. Now, they not only receive emergency calls, but they'll handle other calls coming in for just general information and things of that nature. Some of them shouldn't be coming in 911. Unfortunately, some of them do. But they are all handled. So when you're sitting there and you've got to have staff that has to go through special training every so often, when you have employees that have vacation time, when you have employees that get the flu, and you don't have enough backup to bring them in, we've got our director and administrative staff and everybody else that's actually going in and handling the calls coming in from time to time. That's not right, because it's not funded properly. And repeated requests for a certain level of funding has been denied over and over and over. So who's that really hurt? You think you're helping the people by not having increased taxes to cover that, but you're really hurting the people because you're denying them of service. And if you had a heart attack and 911 couldn't pick the phone up and get you service and you died because of a heart attack, that's what your cuts and reducing your budgets have caused.
I know that another area that has been a kind of a hot topic area lately has been the Humane Society / animal shelter. And I know that there's some difference there and it's very complicated. But you've been fairly vocal in saying that until some administrative changes are made, that you think funding needs to be halted. I know that you were around kind of when they first started this process of the animal shelter as it is now. Do you have any insight as to what needs to go on there? from a county perspective?
From a county perspective, they had asked for an increase in funding. County Commission granted that based on conditions and terms that were verbally expressed. Then they turned around, and by they I mean I guess the director or president of the Humane Society, Mr. Lubis, came out and he said something entirely different. Well, to me, the way that I feel like we ought to operate is if you come to the county in good faith and you make a request based upon certain criteria, and the county goes ahead and they implement the request at that amount, and you start changing what you're going to do and why you're going to do it and how you're going to do it, I say cut off the funding right there. You asked for something based upon this criteria. You were granted funding on that criteria. Now you changed it. So there's a problem there somewhere. Why it developed and how it developed, I don't know all the specifics. Do they have an internal problem? I think they do. I think as an organization goes, there's some internal fighting that's going on, but it's caused a problem for the county as well as the Humane Society, and it needs to be resolved.
Do you feel like that is something that the county should be stepping in and doing, or should that organization or another organization present some sort of a plan to the county?
Well, in Jefferson County, there's no one final say-so. The mayor definitely doesn't have any. Can't even get close unless you can get enough votes on county commission. County commission likes to perceive themselves as a final authority, but they're not. Humane Society apparently isn't. So it's going to require some getting together and hashing this out and structuring something that's going to be good for everyone.
I know that the Animal Control Oversight Committee has been working on this with, I think they've been running things through the mayor's office, and they have been in touch with the Humane Society. So possibly there's something on the horizon, maybe during the budget season, that can be worked out.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Commissioner Bales, who chairs that committee, he's worked diligently on this, trying to come up with a solution on what to do and how to do it. He's been very open and been very candid with his responses on everything.
And of course, when you go, if you've been to a county commission meeting recently, you know that when public comment section comes, basically we have been down to two topics. It has been the Humane Society and it has been Parents Chapel. Those are the two things that bring the folks out right now. So let's talk just a minute about Parents Chapel. I know that the county commission voted several months ago that they really didn't want to pursue the topic of Parents Chapel, but it just keeps coming back up. And so I know you addressed it in the last commission meeting, and you said that you are not in favor of ceding that particular part of the county. In other words, you don't want to give up county land, but you would like to see those people have an answer to their issues as far as service goes. Is that going to take, what does that take? Does that take a little restructuring in the county? Does that take a little more money? What are we looking at as far as to make that happen for those people?
I think it takes a true assessment and a commitment by the county. Those residents are entitled to the services of every other county resident. If you pay taxes in this county or you live in this county, you're entitled to the same quality and level of services everyone else has. If you go over and you look at the roads are in bad shape, many of them, as bad as any other part of the county. Charlie Tipton, our highway superintendent, has done his best with the money that he's allocated. But I can remember a budget cycle when he was told directly, we're going to cut $150,000 out of your budget. 1, 2, 3. That, when we have needs to cut like that, that's foolishness. That's coming from people that don't have, they're more concerned with their power and their position they are with getting a job done. And we see too much of that. The fire department over there has been under attack, and some want to see it cut and closed up. Well, that's providing a service over there. Those people need it. Do we need another ambulance substation over there? I'm not really sure. I can't determine that, but I know our EMS, EMA director, I know our 911 director, I know the other fire chiefs can get together and come up with a decision on that. But the problem is there's a lack of willingness to work in that direction because they're all tired of going before budget committees that want to attack rather than say, let's sit down and let's talk about what needs to be done. What are your needs? You know, a good county commission will look at department heads and say, don't give us your wants, give us your needs, what you need. But our departments get challenged to a ridiculous level. When you start a budget cycle, in the first meeting you say, let's vote and do our best not to raise taxes. When you say, we want every department to come in here with a 3% cut. When you make foolish positions like that right off the bat and never really communicate. Of course, so much of it's personality anyway, and that personality gets away from those individuals that have it in government, and it bleeds out into the community, and the community's hurt. I don't know how you overcome that. There's got to be a point in time when the people want to have a change.
Okay, so you have been the mayor of Jefferson County since what, 2006? This is you have made this statement that this is going to be your final year. You're not running for re-election, and you have had kind of a bird's eye view of Jefferson County from your seat for many years. So, from your perspective, what are some of the biggest pros and cons we have going on in Jefferson County right now? I mean, you've seen a lot of changes over the time. We've grown, almost doubled in size since you've been here. What do we have going for us, and what do we need to work on? Where are our biggest problems, and what are our biggest assets?
That's a good question. And a good self-evaluation, not from an optimist or a pessimist, but a realist, is some of our strengths are the divisions that we have amongst ourselves. I think those allow us to challenge one another and do battle with one another. Hopefully all sides will take those occasions to go ahead and think about what's being said and what's being done and make corrections in some areas. I mean, a lot of times you get single focused in vision and you can't see the big picture. You get into a disagreement with some person or somebody on an issue and you look back and you say, you know, maybe they were right in this area or that area. Not that you were totally wrong, but nobody's totally wrong all the time. Nobody's totally right all the time. That's a good thing for us. I don't mean that to be a bad thing, but it's a good thing to have decent confrontations helpful sometimes. A bad thing is we've become known statewide as anti-growth. We've grown in spite of ourselves. We've done the very best we can to keep industries and businesses away from us. The development that's taking place in the west side of Hamlin County right now, we could have had some of those. But here we sued a truck stop that was going to come into Jefferson County over the side. Does that make any sense? We have this Ford dealership at 417, tremendous asset to the city of Dandridge and Jefferson County as a whole. It got through by just a split vote on county commission. You had people actually voted against that for whatever reason. I mean, the greater good has to be served. And sometimes people will be in the way, and it's unfortunate, but where would we be without an interstate system? Where would we be without TVA? There are some things that have to be done. You can't just hold on forever. So we've grown in spite of ourselves. That is a negative, how we've been anti everything that's come in. Another positive is we've been able to still maintain our beautiful resources, being between the two lakes, Douglas and Cherokee. That's a tremendous asset for us. I don't think we've capitalized on that yet. We have people here that have enough thick skin, enough backbone to take a stand, be criticized, be beaten down. They still keep getting up and moving forward for their position. That's a tremendous asset to have. Our biggest asset is our people here in the county, regardless of what side they're on. The fact that our departments aren't funding at a level that they need to be in many cases, that's a problem for us, and it's going to be a larger problem in the years ahead. I mean, you can't look at a 12-month cycle in government. You've got to look farther ahead than that, knowing that the economy, knowing situations and everything else are going to be like a roller coaster. There's going to be up and down. When you're down, you need to start preparing. I know we came into office during the absolute worst economic times this nation has had since the Great Depression. I've said that so many times, I've worn that phrase out, but it's true. If you go back and you look, if you look at the county, the shape that we were in then compared to where we are today. And I think everybody that's been around since 2006 gets to take some credit for that. So we've got more positives than we have negatives. And that's being a realist and looking at it properly. And of course, when you say some of those things, you have some that get their feelings hurt and they're not going to vote for you next to the election. They're not going to vote for you the next time you go to a county commission meeting because you've ticked them off. Well, you know, my feeling has always been, why is it okay for you to tick me off but me not be able to tick you off? I've always felt like, you know, if you're gonna slap me, I'm gonna hit you with my fist. And that, if I slapped you, I'd expect to get hit by your fist. So it's just life, and that's rough and tumble Jefferson County politics.
You know, this is coming up. 2018 is a year of change for Jefferson County. We have, I call it the big three. We have the mayor's office, we have the director of schools, and we have the sheriff. All three races, or well, 2 races and an appointment coming up. And of those 3, there's only one incumbent running, which is the sheriff. So you know, at least 2 of those offices, there's big change coming. Your office and that of the director of schools, where they're already in search for a new director. Besides the changes in those, what I would call, you know, kind of the tripod of Jefferson County, what we're built on, you have a changing county commission that could be coming because there are several county commissioners who are not running for re-election. You have a trustee's office that's running. I mean, there's a lot of changes, circuit court clerk. I mean, there's a lot of changes coming in Jefferson County, or potential changes coming to Jefferson County. How do we transition that? Because as you know, every time a new county commission comes in, there's a learning curve. In the past, when new county commissions have come in for the last 3 cycles, there's been some stability in the offices. Now you have a learning curve across the board that's potential. How do we do this? How do we transition in Jefferson County?
It needs to be very aggressive, and it needs to be very open. I know when we came in office, we wouldn't afford the luxury of a transition. We got sworn in on a Friday. We had nothing, no employees, no nothing. We had to take the ball and run. I've already pledged to the candidates that are running for mayor that right after, the day after the primary, whether they're running in Republican primary or the general election, they're invited to call and start a transition because it's going to be critical. I think for the this seat doesn't belong to Alan Palmieri. This seat belongs to the Jefferson County residents. They've been gracious in allowing me to occupy it for the time I have, but it's not mine. It belongs to them. So it's my duty and responsibility to make certain that the next person coming in, hopefully we didn't leave him a mess, that he's going to be able to take what we can provide him, the information we can provide him, and the knowledge we can share with him so that he can hit the floor running. And we're committed to do that. And I hope the other officers will do the same thing. There's really not enough time after the August election. You know, you've got just a month to get somebody prepared. So we'll do whatever we have to do to make sure, and I'm in hopes that the other office holders will do the same. So if they've got to hang around a while, if they've got to be on 24-hour call, whatever it takes so that it's smooth. These are not our places. These are just being occupied for the residents of Jefferson County.
So I have to ask you one more question before we go, because there's rumors. You know, there are always rumors.
I live by the rumors.
And so we know that you're not going to be running for mayor of Jefferson County. But are you going to be running for any other office in Jefferson County in 2018?
Well, I've been approached about running for county commissioner.
I had heard that rumor once or twice.
I had, and I had toyed with the idea. I'm not going to say never on that, because in a way I would like to become part of the body that I have so many arguments with. But then again, I think I wouldn't want to be a damn county commissioner for nothing. So I don't know. I can't close the door on anything, but at this point in time, I'm satisfied with my decision not to seek re-election, and I do feel like a little bit of a break. And I think it's good that when you pull yourself out, to give yourself a chance to reflect and to see things from the other side of the aisle there. It's always a little bit different.
So I guess we'll put that down to never say never, right? Is that?
That's a good way to put it.
Okay. Well, I thank you very much for the interview and the information, as always. And I'm sure we will be talking to you again before you leave this office. We always like to check in after budgets gets going pretty good and get your perspective on how things are going to be looking as we head toward the end of the fiscal year and start a new fiscal year. And so thank you very much, Mayor. We appreciate you.
Well, appreciate you and Jefferson County Post. Thank you.